help us out.
Is this real world or exercise?
No, this is not an exercise manifest.
Okay, hey, hold on one second, okay?
So based on that call, the 101st Fighter Squadron in the Vigilant Guardian exercise. Here's what that call sounded like.
Just weapons, Sergeant Powell.
All right, Boston Center, Team U. We have a problem here. We have a hijacked aircraft headed towards New York, and we need you guys we need someone to scramble some F-16s or something up there to help us out.
Is this real world or exercise?
No, this is not an exercise manifest.
Okay, hey, hold on one second, okay?
So based on that call, the 101st Fighter Squadron flying F-15s out of Otis Air National Guard Base are ordered to battle stations. So the alert pilots, Lieutenant Colonel Tim Duffy and Major Daniel Nasty Nash, put on their flight gear, jump in the duty vans, and drive across the field to where the alert F-15 Eagles are parked. They get in the cockpit and wait for their word to launch. At 8:46 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, American Airlines Flight 11 hits the North Tower of the World Trade Center. At the same time, the two F-15s at Otis Air Force Base at battle stations are ordered to launch to intercept Flight 11 that has just hit the North Tower. That order sounded like this.
There's a Huntress with an active air defense scramble for Santa 4546, time 1246. Authenticate Delta X-ray. Scramble immediately, Santa 4546, heading 280, flight level 290. Contact Huntress on frequency 228.9er, backup 364.2.
So it takes a few minutes to start an F-15, and they don't get airborne until 8:53 Eastern Daylight. And when they do, they don't fly directly to Manhattan. They are vectored by New York Center controllers east of the city about 100 miles, where they are told to just hold because air traffic controllers are confused and they really don't want any more traffic over the city at that time. At 9:03, United Flight 175 crashes into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. At the same time, the FAA notifies the Northeast Air Defense Sector Command about the potential that Flight 175 had been hijacked as well. So you can see we have a lot of confusion here, and there's a time lag between what the FAA knows and what's relayed to the Northeast Air Defense Sector. Now, on September 11, 2001, there are only two bases on the East Coast that NORAD has airplanes on alert status. I think sometimes we have this conception that the entire U.S. military can be brought to bear in times of national crisis. On this day, the first wave consisted of 5 airplanes, 2 Eagles and 3 F-16s. Those F-16s were based at Langley Air Force Base. They were part of the 121st Fighter Squadron. And 6 minutes after United Flight 175 hits the South Tower, they are given the order to go to battle stations. So the same drill. They leave the ready room, get their flight gear on, and drive to their jets and sit in the cockpit and wait for the order to launch. At 9:13 a.m., the F-15s that had been holding east of New York City are given the order to vector inbound. They arrive over Manhattan at 9:25 Eastern Daylight Time, 22 minutes after United 175 has hit the South Tower. Now, meanwhile, at 9:24, based on a bogus contact that they believe is headed for Washington, D.C., what is later known as Phantom Flight 11, they launched the alert F-16s out of Langley.
Okay, American Airlines is still airborne. 11, the first guy, he's heading towards Washington. Okay, I think we need to scramble Langley right now, and I'm gonna take the fighters from Otis and try to chase this guy down if I can find him. He's heading towards Langley, or I should say Washington. American 11, the original guy, he's still airborne. Foxy, scramble Langley, head towards the Washington area.
So those 3 F-16s launch, 2 with sidewinders and guns, 1 with guns only, and they are unbriefed about what their mission is. They have no idea what they're doing. So they wind up holding 150 miles east of Washington, D.C., over the Atlantic Ocean. At 9:38 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, American Airlines Flight 77 hits the west side of the Pentagon. Pilot of American Airlines Flight 77 was Chick Burlingame, Naval Academy Class 71, fighter pilot who flew F-4s, and a Top Gun graduate. The Langley F-16s are over 100 miles away at the time. Now, there's a C-130 over D.C., and that airplane is the first to report to Reagan National Airport Tower that the Pentagon has been hit. At 9:43 a.m., the F-16s that are well east of Washington, D.C. are vectored over the city. At 9:53, they arrive overhead and establish a cap station. At 10:03 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, United Flight 93 crashes into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, before the Air Defense Authorities even knew it was hijacked. The nearest fighter was over 100 miles away. Now, there's been some confusion because, as we remember, the president was not in the White House when this went down. He was reading a book to some school children in Florida. And between President Bush and Vice President Cheney, there were some demands from NORAD for authority to fire. They finally authorized permission to fire. The ROE is unclear, though. And because NORAD is afraid of an accidental shoot-down, they don't relay that authority to the pilots who were airborne at the time. So as the morning went on, there was more confusion. That's sort of the theme of the day. And other waves of airplanes launched both out of Otis and Langley. There were tankers airborne, and they established cap stations both over D.C. and over New York City. And they maintained those for several days. And one of the stories that emerged out of the D.C. Air National Guard was that the skipper of one of the squadrons, Lieutenant Colonel Mark Sasseville, and his wingman, Lieutenant Heather Penny, call sign Lucky, launched without any weapons with the intent to ram an airliner if they had to. Some months later, NORAD leadership had to testify in front of the 9/11 Commission, and their testimony caused some controversy because their timeline was different than that had been recorded as a function of radio transmissions and other logbooks and everything else. Specifically, and I'm talking about NORAD leaders Colonel Scott and Major General Arnold, testified that they launched the Langley fighters at 9:13 in response to the threat that American Airlines Flight 77 posed. But what we know from the transmissions that we heard was those fighters were launched based on the Phantom Flight 11 target, not Flight 77. So Colonel Scott testified that they launched in response to Flight 77, and that would also give them time to react to Flight 93. But the times that he gave in testimony were bogus. For instance, he mentions that they started tracking Flight 93 at 9:16 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, but Flight 93 hadn't even been hijacked at that point. And Major General Arnold also said the following during testimony, quote, "It was our intent to intercept United Flight 93. I was personally anxious to see what 93 was going to do, and our intent was to intercept it. We launched the aircraft out of Langley to put them over the top of Washington, D.C., not in response to American Airlines 77, but really to put them in position in case 93 were to head that way." And again, that's bogus in that the time he states, 9:16, the airplane hadn't been hijacked. And in fact, the Northeast Air Defense Sector wouldn't get word for another 51 minutes that 93 existed. And by that time, it had already crashed. Members of the committee were so displeased with that testimony that they actually threatened to turn it over to justice, but that never happened. Meanwhile, as a function of that testimony, which gave the impression that the fighters could have made the intercepts, a conspiracy theory hit the internet that Flight 93 had been shot down. Now, the elements of this theory were that a mysterious white airplane was seen in the vicinity of Flight 93 as it was coming down. The second was that one of the engines was found a considerable distance from the crash site, which would be consistent with damage following a heat-seeking missile hitting the airplane. And the third element of the conspiracy theory was that bodies were found in Indian Lake, which is 6 miles away from the crash site. Now, although all three of these theories have been factually disproven, it doesn't stop them from being proliferate on the internet, of course. Specifically, the white airplane they talk about in the vicinity of the airplane coming downhill was a Dassault Falcon 20, a business jet that was landing at nearby Jonestown Airport and was asked by the air traffic controller to check out the wreckage and pinpoint the crash site, which the pilot did, and then went on and landed at that civilian field. The second element about an engine being found some distance away from the crash site is a mangling of the fact that the fan section was found 300 yards away from the main impact site, which mishap investigators have said is consistent with the way that the airplane hit the ground. And the third element about the bodies being found 6 miles away in Indian Lake has been rejected outright by the Somerset County coroner, who said that all the human remains were found within a 70-acre radius around the crash site. And then the internet also conjured up an F-16 pilot from the South Dakota Air National Guard who they said shot the airplane down. That pilot will not confirm or deny because he doesn't want to give any validity in a denial to this theory. Actually, what this pilot did allow is he took a two-seat F-16 West to pick up an FAA official and fly him to New York City to assist with the investigation that was starting up there. So much for the Flight 93 was shot down conspiracy theory. Again, none of this will stop the internet from going on about it. So what are the main lessons learned here? Obviously, there was a lot of confusion. We shut some barn doors after the horses were out. For all of our tactical aviation might, our posture did nothing to stop the terrorists from flying into their intended targets, with the exception of the one, United Flight 93. They crashed in the field in Pennsylvania due to the bravery of a group of passengers. And this is based on things that they heard over the radio, the Let's Roll transmission. Unfortunately, they were unable to keep the airplane flying, but they did prevent it from hitting its intended target, which authorities believe was the Capitol. So that was a big save by those brave passengers on Flight 93. So some changes have been made. In fact, that tech sergeant that took the original phone call from the FAA there at the Northeast Air Defense Sector is quoted as saying the following with respect to where the system was improved. Quote, back then, the primary focus was when we were looking out at people coming to attack us from the outside. We really weren't focused on the inside. Now our computer systems are bigger and better. Everything the FAA sees, we see. We are much more actively involved in the identification of all aircraft in the United States. We really didn't have to talk to various air traffic control center supervisors. Now we have instant lines with everyone. So that comm chain that we saw was slow and mostly inaccurate on 9/11 should be remedied now by the fact that everybody's looking at the same data and there are instant comms between the two agencies at all times. And of course, the U.S. military got a measure of payback on October 7th. We started strikes in Afghanistan against Al-Qaeda and Taliban targets. These were done primarily by F-14s and F-18s off of aircraft carriers based in the North Arabian Sea because the Air Force had not established a land-based footprint yet. And then some years later, SEAL Team 6, of course, was able to take out bin Laden as part of the Abbottabad raid. For my opinions on the rest of the war in Afghanistan, please check out my Ward at War episode. The other thing I'll mention that on 9/11 I was teaching at the Naval Academy. I just finished a lecture with some first-class midshipmen, seniors, who were about to get their commission some months later and enter the fleet. And the basis of my remarks was that unlike the Academy, where the schedule is very rigid and their lives are pretty predictable, what I said was when you get to the fleet, your lives are going to be anything but predictable. And as an example, I told them a sea story of my 1995 deployment aboard the USS America when I was the operations officer for Fighter Squadron 102, the Diamondbacks. So we transited the Atlantic. We thought that this was going to be what you call a love boat cruise, which is a lot of port calls, maybe some cool bilateral exercises with our NATO partners, but sort of your
What? Yeah. You want lasagna? What do you feel like? Well, I'm hungry too, but what do you feel like? I know I'm hungry too, but what do you feel like? That's what I'm asking you. Hang on, wait. Call you back. Yeah, no, what do you feel like? I'm hungry also. I don't mind. You know, I don't feel like kebab either. You feel like rice or you don't? Yeah, I'm looking. You're looking Uber, I'll look in Dash. Yeah, she's happy. Comfortable. You got your driver's license, yeah? Yeah, but we gotta bring it tomorrow. IDs. So now if you go all those type of people, it's like they enjoy it. You gotta bring this, you gotta bring that, you gotta bring...
Usual Mediterranean type of deployment. However, when we got near lodges on the eastern side of the Atlantic, we got word that we needed to sortie to the Adriatic because the carrier that we were relieving had started dropping bombs on Sarajevo. We're trying to break the Serbian siege of that city. So that's what we did. We made best speed for the Adriatic and wound up fighting that war for some weeks afterwards. Nothing in the fleet goes as planned. That was my point. And little did I know how right I was as I walked out of that lecture back to my office. My wife called me and told me that the first airplane had hit the North Tower. The rest is the history that any of us who were alive at that time remember very well. So when I hear the term never forget, I think of this image. This is the USS John F. Kennedy pulling into New York City for Fleet Week 1998. This was actually my final at sea period during my career. I was the Air Wing Operations Officer for CAG-1. We flew aboard a few F-14s to do an air power demonstration for some of the prominent citizens of New York City that had flown aboard. And then we were hosted by the good people of New York for 6 days around Memorial Day in 1998. It was a fantastic time and a great way to end my seagoing Navy career. So on 9/11, let's remember those who lost their lives. Let's vow to be vigilant so we never have to endure that level of tragedy again. All right, that'll do it for this episode. If you're a first-time viewer, please ring the bell and become a subscriber. Leave the likes and comments. If you'd like to help support this channel, please consider using the super thanks. Hit the heart icon with the $ below, or become a patron at patreon.com/WardCarroll. Check the links below for merch, t-shirts, and coffee mugs, and where to order the Punks trilogy being reissued by the Naval Institute Press. When you order, use the subscriber discount code of PUNKYT, PUNKYT, for a 10% discount. And as always, I look forward to talking to you again very soon.
I sent you $60. I'll have that mentioned. Yeah, whatever, babe. I don't mind. Alright, see ya. Did you hang up on me? Can I now? Hola Raquel, y te mando mucho ánimo y mucho amor desde Australia. Hemos estado orando por Marcelo y por usted también y su familia en este momento tan difícil. Los tenemos muy presentes en nuestra memoria, estamos pensando en ustedes y esperamos y tenemos fe de que salga todo bien. Mucha fe, mucha fortaleza, Raquel. Espero que las cosas estén yendo bien. Espero que todo haya tenido buenas noticias cuando fue a las 12. Por favor, si no le importa, no quiero causarle molestia, pero si me pudiera mandar un mensaje y decirme cómo va todo. Mucho saludo, mucho amor para usted y para su hijo Marcelo.
2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center. A third plane, mistakenly believed to be American 11, is reported just seconds from the White House. But fighter jets are over 150 miles away, and NEADS are desperately trying to get them over Washington.
Right here. I got him. Bravo. Yeah, we just lost track. Just get a V-point. Get a V-point on that. Talk at him. Yeah, we just did too. Okay, we got guys looking at him. Hold on. Where's Langley at? Where are the fighters?
Even at full speed, the F-16s are at least 5 minutes away.
It was, light them up. Let's get them down there where they need to be.
Hey, you need to get those back up. Go. Okay. Go Captain Super. Need be. I don't care how many windows you break.
Major recipient was, I don't care how many windows you break. Go supersonic. 2 jets have already hit. The 2 towers. Rules are out the window right now.
Wait.
We're getting there.
But it was all too late.
Recipient was, I don't care how many windows you break. Go supersonic. 2 jets have already hit. The 2 towers. Rules are out the window right now. We're getting there.
It was all too late.
Oh my goodness. Live picture from Washington. There is smoke pouring out of the Pentagon.
The plane that smashed into the Pentagon wasn't the Phantom American 11, believed to be heading for the White House, but in fact the other missing plane, the American 77.
Okay, the aircraft that you said was by the White House is now near the
Oh,
I don't know where the hell they're getting there. I said Washington has no clue when I called Washington about it. They didn't know what the hell was going on. What is this thing that's going on TV now? I don't know.
oh, get down.
Hey. What is this about?
Oh, here she goes.
Hi.
Oh, you little bastard.
Glad I got an A.
Shield, I need shield. Where's that? Where you need? Oh. You told me. Yeah. But I was looking for it for myself. Yes, Tiny. I taught you. Tiny. Was that in here? No. Aw, pie. Where they all at?
No, do that. You want to go tell me that's what I'm going to.
See ya.
Uno, dos.
Hey, hey.
Hello, hello. 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. Hey, 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 hey. 1 2 1 2. Put you on. 1 2 1 2. Hello. 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. Hey.
Hello, hello. 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 What is that?
Yeah, drop. ¿Cómo te huevonas? Oh.
You better go. Let go.
Hi.
get your card. Where's the other guy's card? I can't see it. It's okay.
Qué bueno.
Over by the White House, it's now near the Pentagon. I don't know where the hell they're getting their info. I said Washington has no clue when I called Washington about it. They didn't know what the hell was going on. What does this say that's going on TV now? I don't know. Hey, what is this about?
We understand that there has been.
You were an F-16 pilot on that day, and where were?
And so while we were doing our pre-flight just off the coast, which turned out to be a C-130, believe it or not, that's how chaotic it was at that point. And you know, I'll just back up for a second, guys who had all over. We're the.
Qué mal sonido tiene.
Purdue University worked with the American Society to produce science-based simulation. The jetliner crashes into the 96th floor, severing a number of perimeter columns in the structure.
And you see, I can tell you quite honestly that we didn't fudge. The broken columns in the facade, by calculation, coincide almost exactly with those that were broken, so that our model was correct.
The simulation shows the impact from many different angles.
Hello? Oh, good, because I'm starving. Yeah. Nice. Okay, I'll come. See ya.